Yeah, man. So are you awake?
Yeah, thanks for giving me a few moments.
Cool, man.
I'm not a morning guy like you.
Yeah, I guess I'm a morning guy only because, well, number one, I think I'm getting old. So
Yeah,
I think that just naturally happens. You know, you always hear about the grandparents waking up at 5,
yeah.
but the 18-year-old or the college students waking up at like noon or 2 p.m. After a night of partying. So different phases of life.
Well, maybe not. I think I'm still in the latter. I had some of the boys over for a barbecue last night, and I think I didn't get to bed early for sure. But it's been that way. Like it's been a lot. I think during COVID, I think people are so scared of their own shadows that I've tried to really refute some of that and really make sure people are over here, and I'm meeting up with guys and going for jogs with some brothers. I got one of my lodge brothers. We go for runs after work. We both sign off and we go for jogs. Yesterday I went from my house, which is in the heart of actually, if you look at the layout of DC, I would be at the top of one of the points of the pentagram. I'm at Logan Circle. Another one of the points of the inverted pentagram is over.
Did you plan that, Adam?
DuPont. I mean, I'm not going to confirm or deny, but it happened.
Right.
And
hey, by the way, how's my volume? Is it okay or?
Yeah. How's mine? Can you see me and everything? You're perfect. Like you're.
Yeah.
I know I got this sun.
No, you look good. I mean, the thing is, with video, you always want light coming on your face, towards your face, not from behind. You don't have a light source in front, do you?
Not a great one. I mean, my.
But you look good. I mean, you look fine.
I can try and pull this off, see if it helps. I don't know if this would. Does that bring more light on my face?
Actually, that's better. Oh yeah, much better, man. Yeah. You look great now.
All right.
So, man, thanks again. Thanks and welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah.
Brother Adam Goldman. Long time in the making, trying to get a time that works for both of us. So wow. So tell me about yourself, man. Like where do you come from? Where were you born? What's your astrology sign? The whole 9 yards, and then sort of lead into Freemasonry. Take your time too. Take your time. I think this is actually an interesting part of the show, getting to know who the brother is and what your background is.
Great. Yeah, no, and I've seen quite a few of your shows. And yeah, so I come from a little town in Southern California, pretty much born and raised in La Jolla, California. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah. And
we have that connection then. Did you know that?
I didn't.
I'm born in upstate New York in Syracuse, but when I was 1, my family moved to Santa Monica. And I lived in Santa Monica until I was 7. So I was always hanging out at the beach in Santa Monica as early childhood, the formative years.
Awesome. Yeah. So I started off in La Jolla. I think I was there pretty much till I think around 4th grade. In 4th grade, we moved up to, so if you know, La Jolla is like kind of fancy, pretentious, however you want to look at it. And when about 4th grade, we moved from La Jolla, where I went to La Jolla Elementary, and then went to a town, what is it? I think it's just 1 north, actually, and still on the beach, and it was called Del Mar, so I'm what's called a Del Martian, and so, but Del Mar is cool because if you grew up a surfer like I did, then it's more small, and they didn't have like big corporations in there. So if you're in La Jolla, you're gonna have like big companies, but in Del Mar there was really not much like fast food was allowed in. Certainly the town I ended up moving to 1 north of there called Solana Beach, even less so. By the time we moved to Solana Beach around my junior high years, it was like a real small surf town, exactly.
Have you been to Santa Cruz?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I've surfed Steamer's Lane. And
okay. Yeah. I lived in San Francisco about 10 years. So I used to go to visit Santa Cruz once in a while, but it's similar, small surf town.
Yeah. Santa Cruz is awesome. And they got the university there. So, but it's more I'd say Santa Cruz has more people that like come in for the school, where you see Santa Cruz, but my town like had nothing like that. I mean, it had the local surf spots and Mexican food, right? That's like everything is,
man.
you know, all the guys that come there just like
don't remind me.
Yeah.
Can't get good Mexican food around here, man, at all. It's sad.
Well, even in Mexico, like if you're not in northern Baja California and you grew up where I did, it's like you go down to Mexico City or these other parts and they don't, you know, they don't do the same style. For example, one of the towns that we would surf at was called Rosarito, but just around that town was a very famous lobster community, and everyone would go as children. Like our parents would take us into Tijuana and then pass there into this town, Puerto Nuevo, because you could go with all your buddies and, you know, you would have a lady making fresh tortillas, and the beach off of there produced a lot of lobsters. So the lobsters would come in, but the problem is with the lobster from Puerto Nuevo it was the sewage, you know, wasn't the finest in this part of Tijuana. So the pipes didn't go out far enough. So in order to make sure all the germs were killed, they would take the lobsters and I think they boil them first, split them in half, and then fry them in butter to make sure everything's killed. And so it made them very, very rich.
So COVID-free lobster.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but those are, I mean, that's kind of the area where I grew up. It was you know, it was typical to Southern California. I always say, you know, when I hear about, you know, guys from the Midwest and elsewhere that, you know, they grew up and they played football and they baseball and what have you, where I went to school, like nobody really cared about the football players or the baseball players. It was all about like, were you on the surf team? Were you, yeah, like surf PE in the mornings, you know, you go.
Man, I would have preferred to go to school where you were going to school, because I went to school in upstate New York, and yeah, it was about football, lacrosse, basketball. And I didn't do any of those things. You know, I was always doing the individual sports like gymnastics, tennis, wrestling. And, you know, I was never stellar at any of those things, but surfing, I would have loved to do that.
Yeah.
I skated in high school.
See, and I wonder if that's something that we have common in our natal charts, because yeah, I've never been like my sports were never ones that were team based. Like I also surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding, golfing, like things where it was like me versus myself, or me versus one other. Like I did like karate and things like that, but yeah, not like big, you know, soccer or anything like that. Like even though I'm half English, so my dad was a big soccer guy.
I've got the English too. That's interesting. Wait, the English is okay on your dad's side?
So my father moved here, I think, God, I should know this, but I want to say probably in the late 50s or something. My grandfather was a captain in the Royal Army and had some issues after the war, and his father was a politician, my great grandfather. So I think he was embarrassing the family in London because they were from a particular bloodline and were anyway, it was an embarrassment from what I understand. And so they sent him away with my aunt, my father, and my grandmother, and they all moved eventually to California, where my dad met my mom at San Diego State University. This is in the old days when my mom was doing a home ec degree, right? Home economics.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that. Wow.
Dating myself. So,
and I remember taking those home ec classes. I think it was like, God, was it junior high school, or it might have been even high school in the beginning? I can't remember, but those are fun times where you could actually cook in school, and that was considered a class.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But that's kind of how that side came here. And then, and then what did I say? I mean, it's interesting because things came full circle. I, ended up going to to school for grad school in London, and then maybe if I talk more about the my Masonic history, I'll bring that together. But yeah, anyway, I grew up. I grew up in Southern California, and didn't really leave until I did like all the guys there. Surfed and
Yeah.
smoked weed.
Now
and,
I know why you always do this.
That's right. That's what we do. Yeah. And we were always kind of like hopping over between some friends in Hawaii or down in Mexico or up the coast, like all the surf spots. But yeah, I think but eventually, just being a little troublemaker, not doing well in school, and my family, put their foot down, and my grandfather, the patriarch of the family, said that I needed to man up, and he wanted me to join the Navy. But and this is funny because not post World War II, not a bunch of Jews going into the military, right? Yeah, and so but I always did what he said, or I think I did a lot, but I always did it like kind of my own way. And so he wanted me to get a job like he had in the Navy. And so I knew I couldn't say no to him because I was living in one of his properties. And but I went in the Army instead. So kind of along the same lines, but I joined Army infantry, and then I started having to get used to people from different towns, because where I grew up, it was very localized and not really big on outsiders. And then like one day, just to be in Fort Benning, Georgia, and dealing with guys from, it was culture shock. Guys from like Mississippi telling me about like eating pig brains and eggs for breakfast and things.
Oh, Jesus. Oh my God. Yeah. Intense. Wow, man. There's so many things I was thinking about when you were talking. I mean, first of all, we have a lot of things in common. I even think that we may have family genealogy in common. I think I mentioned that to you in one of our chats. I've been doing genealogy research for about 10 years. And, when I looked up Goldman, because I had like my DNA done by 3 different companies, and done most of my genealogy research using Ancestry.com. Going back, I've got family going back to 1300s, 1400s. When I looked up Goldman for the DNA check, I've got tons of Goldmans. Tons. Yeah. Actually, like of all Jewish last names, that one keeps coming up. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I think, and we do look kind of similar. Do you have?
You got this salt and pepper here, just like
exactly. Yeah. And do you have a Hungarian background too? Did you mention?
There's definitely East Europe. I have. Yes. I also did the ancestry thing, and came out like 100%, mainly like Ashkenaz and whatnot.
Right. Mine's Ashkenaz, but mine's not 100%. Mine's like 32% or something, because I'm mixed. My dad is not Jewish. Oh, okay. He's, Chevrier. It's French.
Yeah, sure.
And that side of the family, I've tried to look into it, but I haven't found that much interesting. I know there's got to be something interesting there, but it seems like all the interesting stuff's on my mom's side.
Now that you say it like that, isn't chèvre goat cheese, right? Like, were you guys the goat cheese?
Well, chèvre is goat. And
goat.
Chèvre is goat. So chevrier means like someone who works with goats. So that's what really got me into the Masonic Lodge.
Interesting.
Someone to handle the goats.
And I'm a Capricorn, so you're working with a goat now.
Yeah, exactly. And so they needed someone in the lodge to work with goats, for the ceremonies and stuff. So that's why they got a chevrier to come in.
I got it. Yeah, right in the goat.
So I also heard from somebody else that was studying like French last names, and he said it relates to chevron, which is that last piece of a boat, that has to be custom tailored, like a last piece to put it all together, like that leverage point in the boat. And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. I never heard that. But he was the only one that's ever said that. Everything else I've seen, it means chevrier. But actually, if you go back, like I think I go back to like, if I go back to early 1800s, 1700s, it changes to chabrier. So that's the older version with a B, chabrier, which I actually like better than chevrier. Chevrier seems a little too weak, but chabrier has more power.
If you can find any of the old coats of arms or anything, I
yes, I did find
work
some
with you to.
Oh, really?
To decipher them, but the but yeah, and then
Okay, good.
and then also the root chevron, right? So that's the phallic symbol that in the army, are the sergeant stripes, and
Right.
and even if you look at the gas station chevron that has two of those, you'll see that it's a two-dimensional representation of one square or one cube over another. Yeah. So
Interesting.
yeah. And it has very definite meanings in the secret society
Right.
symbols. Yeah.
And then the English side too, we have in common. It's all coming from my mom's side. In fact, my mom's matriarchal side is going, the Ashkenazi, going back to either Slovakia or Hungary, likely Budapest. But they may have come from Slovakia. It's not clear. But she also has, from my grandmother's husband, who was Earl Hammond, the last name Hammond. And so if you trace that back, it goes directly back to the royal physician of King James I was John Hammond, Dr. John Hammond. He was the royal physician for King James and his son. He actually did, I guess, I don't know if they did autopsies back then, but he determined the cause of death for King James's son. And I think he was a friend of John Dee, and that's how John Dee introduced him into the royal court. Because I saw in one of John Dee's journals, he talks about a gentleman, John Hammond, that he introduced to the royal court and blah, blah, blah. Just in passing.
And a doctor back then wouldn't have been practicing his trade properly if he wasn't speaking with like the court astrologer, right? I mean,
sure. And I'm sure he was a Mason too, because all those guys around King James were Masons.
Or Rosicrucian.
Or Rosicrucians, yeah, exactly. And then if you follow that side of the family back too, you get to Sir Thomas More, who was actually another great grandfather of mine. I don't know, 12th or 15th, or I don't know what it is, great grandfather.
Okay.
And for a while I thought Robert the Bruce was in the bloodline, but then I realized I made a mistake. Just one marriage off or something. But yeah, genealogy is fascinating. I mean, and that's what makes it fun when you start to find like, oh my God, I have someone in my family that was important at some point, it's just exciting. And especially when you get pics, you find a pic of a, sixth great grandfather or a painting of a grandfather you had. It's like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So what about your astrology? I know we're getting off topic here, but that's fine. I told you we'd have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, no, we'll go whatever way. We'll go whatever way you want.
And I'm sure this somehow connects to Masonry, folks. We'll get there. Don't worry, it'll come around.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could get
real life.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a lot of wonderful books out there that describe, why some of the degree work in Freemasonry and the Scottish Rite degrees and certainly the Royal Arch degrees are all astrological. I mean, when you get into the Royal Arch, the first thing you see, and I'm not giving any secrets away, but you look at any of our banners and available online, you see what's called the tetramorph, which is like a version of the Sphinx, except for it has, but when you look at these, I mean, it's a man's face like the Sphinx. And associated with Aquarius, and you'll see what else you see in there. I guess you see.
Well, the arch itself could be seen as like half of the zodiac there.
Absolutely, yeah, and we should have almost started with that because today, today has the potential. I don't know, I don't know if you were paying attention, but they're saying that today is the real December 12th, 2012. But and it also happens to align with like there's going to be the what do they call it? Anyway, I'm having an old man moment, but an eclipse today. Thanks. And
I think I just saw that live online before we got online.
Yeah, and so I guess somehow, but not visible from here. I think it's Australia.
No, it's not visible. That's why it was it was like literally 20 minutes ago or something. Yeah. But it was amazing.
But today is supposed to be, so if, I guess, I didn't read all about it to be honest with you, but I think the gist of what I saw was the switch over from the old calendar system to the new one. There was, there was kind of some time lost, and the actual December what was it, 21st, 2012 actually is today, June 21st.
Right. Wasn't that
2020.
based on, what was it, the Julian or the Gregorian calendar was
Was a
used or
switch over to the
misused?
Gregorian, yeah.
It was almost like they didn't take into account the precession, sort of like sidereal zodiac is the sort of more correct astronomical version. It seemed like they didn't use like the corrected version of the calendar or something like that, which would make the world ending today in theory.
Yeah.
Hopefully not live while we're on the show, but and this is not live, so we can edit it. If the world ends, I'll edit that out.
Okay.
I promise.
All right. I appreciate it. So, but I mean, a lot going on today. And if we're just getting into the astrology, so before this, I just checked quickly. We just moved into the house of Cancer yesterday. So we've been kind of in this weird spot at the end of Gemini, right? The twins, and Friday I looked at the chart because I was in a study group where we discuss tarot, and so before I do a tarot read, I do it based on the astrological alignment. So at the end of Gemini on Friday, which is this more feminine lunar day of Freya, you saw, interestingly, like the moon and her mom, like the way I was interpreting it was like you had in tarot, you had the high priestess and the empress kind of like down in one corner, and they were kind of collaborating or conspiring, however you look at it. And then at the very end of the house of Gemini, almost to Cancer, was the sun. And so this kind of like male, the way I was looking at it, like a husband and wife, you had this kind of like male solar energy with its phallic rays and this, lunar female energy, but they couldn't be further apart. Like they're in different parts of the house, and the mom's talking with her daughter, right? And so there was a lot of kind of antagonism going on.
Whereas that makes a lot of sense with the divisiveness that's happening, I don't know if you've heard of George Lakoff, but he's got this idea called frame theory. Have you heard of him?
No.
Yeah, and he says that sort of if you look at the archetypes of the Republicans and the Democrats, he said that the Republicans are like the father figure and the Democrats are the mother figure, and they represent the two ways of looking at the world. So the mother figure is very forgiving. Let's talk about it. It's okay. Let's be open, love each other, let's just give out free money and feed everyone, this sort of motherly ideal of love and kindness. And then the father figures are like tough love, it's like, yeah, that's the last time he's going to do that. I'm kicking him out, and so he talks about it in terms of the father archetype and the mother archetype. So that's very interesting that you said that those two archetypes were very distant. Yeah.
I think of it more like, when it comes to politics, I think of it more, I guess, like in terms of like David Icke would have described it, right? The etymology of the word itself, right? Politics, poly meaning many, and ticks are blood-sucking insects.
I like that, man. I like that. That's why I'm so over these parties and all this crap. I just want to be free.
Different sides
just
of the
let me
same
breathe.
Point.
Let me think for myself. And so I do that.
Well, these guys do astrology too. The old saying, millionaires don't care about astrology, but billionaires do. So believe me, at the tops of these food chains that disappear beyond the secret society network, you'll see at leadership levels in countries and you'll see, certainly, everyone will say, Bolivar was a Mason, or they'll say whoever was a Mason, FDR, but beyond that, it just goes into higher and higher hierarchies, and believe me, these guys are paying attention to astrology.
I don't blame them.
Segue back, because these subtle energies, when you know how to harness them, I'll give you an example. There's a story that says when the early government of the United States decided, like, hey, we're gonna really do this thing against the British, let's get our best and brightest, and they sent for George Washington, and George shows up in full battle dress uniform, and they said, what are you doing? He's like, well, I've been waiting for you guys to call me. There was a potential for like a conflict and a potential for a win which associates with the two pillars as you enter the lodge room. You know, as above, so below. You have the sphere terrestrial and the sphere heavenly. And so if you understand how the two correspond and you understand the alignment, and it was the same thing for Ben Franklin, right? Ben is hanging out in Paris in 89, right? He's here in 76, like everywhere where there's about to be an upheaval. And this guy is obsessed with the movement of the stars. He didn't create the Poor John's the Poor Farmer's Almanac, whatever it was, but because he had some love of poor farmers. He was, you know, charting the movement of the heavens for the stuff he was doing in secret society networks. And it's like, well, I got a printer, I may as well make a pence on it as well, right?
Fascinating. I'm also into astrology. I've been dormant for many years. I mean, I was back in, I think it was like 93, 94, 95. I was studying intensely astrology. I was studying Vedic astrology, actually, Jyotish, so sidereal. And and I was going to be a Vedic astrologer. I was studying with a professional and going to classes. This is in San Francisco, so there's a lot of these types of classes you can go to. That was one of the reasons why I moved to San Francisco after BU, is because I was into spiritual stuff, esoteric stuff, and I knew that there was a lot of that going on in San Francisco. So I went there and got my fill of that. And so, I still love astrology, and I learned from doing it that it's real. Because I've seen people's charts, and, you know, I know that feeling when you look at a chart, like, yep, that's you clearly, or you got the wrong time. This can't be you. I know you, and this is not your chart. And then people have to go back and look it up. They're like, oh, not 8 p.m., 8 a.m. I'm like, oh, voila. And now we look at the chart, and it's perfect now, right?
I just had that with a buddy. we were going over one of my work colleagues. I'm going to do a chart for her birthday, and he was describing what he was seeing in her natal chart, and I'm like, yeah, something's not right. And so I'm with you. And then he had it 12 hours different. He actually put a PM instead of an AM.
It happens.
It's just that slight difference. It was like, it was obvious that it wasn't her. And so, but the naysayers, they don't get it. But I know you. But the good thing about sidereal astrology, when I spent a brief moment in it, it really gets you out of the sun-centric idea, right? Because the Vedic astrologers give two shits about the sun. They're like, yeah, I mean, the sun's interesting, but where was that moon? Right.
Or where's your ascendant? You know,
where's your ascendant? Right.
And or, you know, what's your dominant planet in the chart? What's the dominant energy? Like, so, you know, in my chart, maybe it'd be good to talk about our charts and see where there's connections there. But I'm in Vedic, and I'm talking Vedic here. I'm talking sidereal. So there may be, you know,
you're going to lose half your audience, but okay.
I'm going to lose half my audience. I'm going to lose Jamie Lamb now.
Yeah.
He's hanging up. So I'm a Virgo rising in that. And by the way, I've looked at my Western chart, and it also makes sense to me. There's some things that stay in common that's what makes sense to me, basically. And it's a lot of the Scorpio stuff. But so I'm Virgo rising. But if you look, all my benefic planets are in Scorpio. So I've got Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury all in Scorpio in the third house. The house of passion and zeal, too, some would say. And so, where are my interests? It's all in this spiritual, esoteric stuff, right? And what type of person am I? The teacher, analytical type, Virgo, can be shy, you know, all of that I have. So that's clear. And that's why I studied Vedic astrology, right? It's in my chart. You got the Virgo rising with a lot of Scorpio. You got that occult interest going on. So I think those are the dominant things in my chart. There are other things going on, but that's what stands out to me in my chart.
Interesting. And your ring today is an octagonal star, right? Like 12. But to bring it back, and I know we don't want to spend like the whole time on astrology, but because you and I both are Kabbalists, I mean, it's very interesting as you look at, you know, the movement of the planets. I mean, it's all represented in, you know, the tree of life as well. But I'll say that today, so I was telling you that when I was looking at the planets on the day that wasn't the end of the world, Friday, compared to today, they were, you know, there was a lot going on between, you know, mother and daughter, or Venus and Luna. And then today, the first thing, now we're in Cancer. So now we're here, right? We're dealing with this, and so
That's today.
yeah, and this is the new sign that we're in, and so and how it relates to Masonry immediately is, here
the
is
Royal Arch.
well, but not even just that, just even in the Blue Lodge.
Yeah.
Even in the Blue Lodge, right? When you come in, you come between two pillars, and then you know that you represent the middle pillar, right?
Exactly.
Three of them as you're walking in vertical.
That's right.
And then together,
you got Boaz there with the black lion, and then Jachin is on the right there.
That's right. And so the Sphinx, the white Sphinx is representing, as you said, Jachin, and is the male solar energies, and then the female lunar energies are in the other one. So immediately you see that right, the number of this major arcana is 7. The perfect number, and then the other thing you see, but still, like, look at his shoulders, what he's got on there.
Ooh, moons.
Right. So he's telling you that there's a bit more of this lunar thing, and I believe that I think there's some Aryan stuff in here. Aries, I believe, is hidden in here as well. But
that's interesting.
It's been a while since I've looked at
I wonder if that, sometimes I think about the idea of balance of the male and female energies, and then I think about caritas, which feels more feminine to me. And I feel like, yes, we need to balance with a slight leaning towards the feminine in the world. And could that be why the moon's on his shoulders? I don't know. I mean, these are just, I'm just speculating here.
Well, even more interesting, like if you look at some of these very ancient societies, they were matriarchal, and some believe that there's been a concerted effort by males that were once dominated by the females, and then you get all this mythos of the Amazon and Wonder Woman and all that stuff. But that at one time, the women essentially ran society, and then there was a point in time when they got anyway.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is baked into the into this slanderous stuff they say of Mary Magdalene, right? When the church decided to, call her what they did, when she was actually a Phoenician princess, and Christ was of the line of David, obviously. So, so if the story came out properly in the Gnostic tradition, then you really would have had this, power couple, right? This Phoenician princess and this Davidian king. So,
wow. When you talk about women, leading, it reminded me of Esoteric Sunday's watch party. I don't know if you saw the Native American one I did, but
I didn't get that.
It's a good one, and you might like it, because in particular, one of the Native American elders on there talks about how in Onondaga, where I'm from, the way they elect the men leaders is the women do it.
Nice.
The women vet and propose the man that will be the leader. So that has to go through that filter of the women. So they are men, but they're men that have been specifically chosen by the women, that the women feel comfortable with that man leading. And I think that's an interesting way to give some real power to women. But at the same time, have men have a role.
And you know what it reminds you of as a Kabbalist? The supernals of the tree of life, because you have the Father and the Son, Keter and Hokmah, but it's incomplete. It can't do anything. There's no creation, right? With you just have the male energy, or you can't do anything with it. And but it's when you complete that triangle with Bina that you can actually begin to create what becomes lower on the tree. So and just like the whole idea of creation, like I've said it before. I know you've been to some of my presentations on or some of this Kabbalistic stuff, but it's all, you can't have creation and without the female, obviously. So to have this kind of idea of this male deity, what this one Mason I know used to call the anthropomorphic Santa Claus myth, and but also, this is why it's so powerful to understand Freemasonry through the lens of Qabbalah, is because you can't understand things like, the book of Genesis 1:1, when you're coming into a lodge and that's being read. You can't understand these in the English. And so just the idea when we say God created the heavens and the earth, but God is misleading, because that is a singular, and then it has this kind of male ideology that goes along with it, when the word Elohim, right, El by itself is male.
Right.
But the moment you add the H, the letter Hey, then it becomes Eloah, right?
Which is feminine, right?
Yeah, which is a goddess, right? And so, and it also could be pronounced Allah, right? But so Eloah, and then and so now you have the goddess, and then you add the S suffix, right? You add the Yud Mem suffix at the end, and makes it plural. So really, it's like this masculine plural. So it's this really interesting thing that the rabbis did, which was take this feminine goddess word, Eloah, and then give it a masculine plural. So if you don't understand the tree of life,
I didn't realize the plural was a masculine plural. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and so you could either say the gods and the goddesses, or you could say but I think there's even more accurate interpretations of it. So
it makes sense. I mean, you think about it, you need feminine to do any kind of creation, right? The woman is the one that gets pregnant and gives birth. So, if you're talking about creation, you're going to need a feminine energy to do that. But you're also going to need the combination of a male energy. Yeah. So it makes sense that one term, Elohim, sort of mixes the male and female in a plurality to create all of the world. I mean, in fact, everything in this world is a plurality in a way, and everything's giving birth all the time. So it makes sense to me anyway. But yeah, and I think that obviously the Bible there's so many levels of interpretation, and I think that's what some people don't fully understand. I mean, there's so many levels. I think in the Hebrew tradition, there's 5 levels of interpretation, and Sod is the deepest and the secret interpretation that you'd find in the Zohar.
Right, and Sodi, right, and Sodi means secret, right, and then but if you move the Y at the end or the Yud at the end to the beginning, then you get, instead of Sodi, what do you get? Yesod, right, the foundation, which is so the and that again, that's the lunar energy, or the lunar sephira, which is over the groin when the tree of life is put over a man or woman's body, and it's associated either with the testicles or the ovaries or something with the reproductive organs. And but it means the foundation, and its symbol is the cube, and in Freemasonry it is the ashlar, right? And so in the Old Testament, it's the stone that Jacob rests his head upon when he has his vision, and he communes with the great I am, with God, in where? In Pineal, right? That's that's where he goes to meet God. So he's going up his Jacob's ladder, his spine, and in the pineal gland, he has his vision.
If it's not too calcinated.
Yeah. Well.
Have you heard that whole thing about African Americans or people of African descent have less calcinated pineal glands? Have you heard about that research? I mean, I don't know how accurate it is, but
let me tell you this. I don't want to get too into this one, because I want to finish the astrological read for today, considering it's the end of the world. But
yeah, that's right. We're running out of time, Adam.
That's right. I want to make sure I get these last 2 parts in. But I will say that there is a lot of very interesting research by lettered people I respect, that'll tell you there's that I like a saying that says, that Bill Hicks had, which says, "Call me a conspiracy theorist and I'll call you a coincidence theorist." So there's it's a heck of a coincidence that the crap that they're putting on our vegetables at the farm, this Roundup, whatever the chemical is called, that mixed with a lot of
fluoride,
sodium fluoride, and I won't get into the history of that either, because that's very political. But
but water, man, water.
But all Jews should know the history of fluoride, and but we all should. and but in particular, and but when you look at the great storm of all these things, the effect is it calcinates the pineal gland.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, you know, some would say the connection to the third eye or the seat of the soul,
Of course.
right? A very important gland, small, but, you know, supremely powerful in some ways.
And obviously I know, you know, but, you know, for others that haven't seen, you know, if you ever look at a side angle where you split the hemispheres of the brain, you see the, you know, you see the eye of Ra, you see the, in the, in between the hemispheres of the brain, and then you have, you know, the pineal and one of the other
and the pineal gland has like rods and cones in it or something, right? Or something similar,
right? If you've ever hung out at the
Vatican,
an
actual eye,
and if you ever hung out at the Vatican, when you first get into the Vatican, I think it's over there on the left when you first walk in, and they got this giant pine cone. You're like, what does this pine cone have to do with it?
And surrounded by a couple peacocks, right? Very interesting.
That's right. Yeah. Right. The pine cone is the pineal, right? Right. And then that's all Kabbalistic because it has to do with the flower of life and the tree of life.
And it connects to the deacon rods. If you go back, what is it?
Pinocchio.
Thyrsus or something like that. A thyrsus. Remember that?
And also Pinocchio, right? Pinocchio, you know, is this, you know, I don't know, a golem or something like that. But but his name in means Occhio is like like one of the older Spanish derivatives, which means the seed. And so it's like the pine seed, right? So like this pine cone, pineal, I mean, it's all hidden in there.
Right. And then the pine tree also was always symbolic of immortality because, you know, it was the evergreen. That's and a tree that, you know, no matter what the season, it always had leaves, you know, that was very unique. And the ancients remarked that symbolically as a symbol of immortality. And where do you get immortality?
Freemasonry, we just swapped for the acacia, right? And when you see the Virgin weeping, you know, she has the sprig of acacia in her right hand.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So, man.
Anyway, just let me give you the last two cards in case the world.
Oh, yes, please do.
Let me just give you the last two. So we're in the first decan of Cancer. So you see this great so here's the
similar thing going on there.
Right, the male and female, and so here's there's your two pillars. That's the lunar and the solar, and but now you're in a water sign. So now you have the cups, right, which is associated with the world of Bria in Qabbalah, and then finally being the sun's day. So you see that, you know, here is, you know, so if you had the act of creation right here with Hokmah, or with Hesed and Geburah here, right? Now they've given, you know, birth to their son Tiferet, right, which is associated with the sun. And but you can see that Rider-Waite, they did a little play on words here, and so on top is the SUN, and below on the Behold a Pale Horse is the SON. So anyway, so just cool stuff for today.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
So I actually had some questions here. I'm looking at what would be fun to talk about. I guess, you know, I think the first one is a good question. You know, we talk about the craft, you know, as Masons, you know, those outside of Masonry might not know what we're talking about. And we often capitalize the craft, you know, and I like that term actually for what we do, or the great work, some would call it. It's Freemasonry. I mean, what is the craft to you?
Yeah, thanks. Ancient repository of symbols that unfortunately have been lost to the ages, and not enough people, you know, have these conversations. Not enough Masons, I should say, have these conversations. To me, the craft is, you know, just a progressive line coming from, you know, through ancient Greco-Roman, Eleusinian stuff, and, you know, maybe Hiram was once Persephone. Before that, it was, you know, the mysteries of Osiris and Isis and the ancient Trinity, right, of Isis, Ra, and El, Israel, right, and so that ancient Trinity, and and Hiram, is also another, as you well know, the Hebrew in its ancient form, post Phoenician, it had no vowels in it, right? So
Right.
so you have the consonants H, R, and M for Hiram, right? That's all you would see is Hey, Resh, Mem, but if you plug in different vowels, right? Because nobody knows how these words were pronounced. Any of these rabbinic or theologians that tell you that they know how to pronounce shalom or anything like that, they don't. They
Right.
don't bury the lead. They're making educated guesses, and maybe these have been passed down. But Hiram is just as easily pronounced Hermes or Hermes, right? And so.
Right.
And so then we know that Hermes is also the Egyptian god Thoth. And so I hope I didn't lose your question, but
the craft. What is the craft? What is the craft? That's good. So, you're meandering, which is what this show is all about, bro.
Yeah, but I want to say somewhat on point. So
we'll wind up. It's the winding staircase. We'll get back to the point.
It's a rough and rugged road, and it's a circuitous route. But to me, there's a reason why the lodge has a volume of the sacred law in the middle on the altar with a square and a compass and everything that's there. It's actually the volumes of the sacred law, whether especially the Abrahamic faith, which I'm more comfortable with, either the New or Old Testament and the Quran. If you know how to read the codes in those books, which is very threatening to the Church of Antiquity, you find that they're all saying the same thing, which is why the first Crusades weren't against the Muslims. They were against other Christians, right? The Gnostics, the Chevriers of South France, right? The Cathar. And so but when you realize that it's all a code and that they've veiled some of this Kabbalistic stuff in different stories, then you see that Abraham and Sarah, in Hindu is just Brahma and Sada or Sada Shakti. And so you find that these and you also find that Sanders Bonacci says it's that the Brahma, Sarah is the cerebellum, and Brahma, I'm probably forgetting what the other
Brahma cerebellum, Brahma cortex. I don't.
No, I think maybe bellum. Yeah, but cerebral. Yeah, I don't know.
That does it right there. Cerebral got both of them inside.
Yeah. So so you find that this ancient foundation, this Yesod, below all of the great Abrahamic faiths, has these Kabbalistic teachings of everything from the archetypal Absolute stuff down to Asiya in the physical world, and so it has the astrology hidden, right? The fall of man is as you're entering the winter months of the zodiac, and it's also obviously associated with some of the lower stuff on the Tree of Life. But all of these things are hidden in the stories of our wardens. I just had a piece come out yesterday on Tria Prima and on the number 6. And
great article. I read it last night, bro.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Yeah, and but I think one of the points it makes is there, these things that we hear about from the junior warden, people that'll tell you, we're not a secret society, we're a society with secrets, and those are just scripts and words, and they don't really, there's nothing really profound about it. Well, I wanted to, at least expose Kabbalistically one little thing, which is, why do we call the junior warden the beauty and glory of the day? And you find out that beauty in Hebrew is Tiferet, which is right at the soul,
the heart,
right?
The rose.
Beauty and is the letter Vav, the 6th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, a joining idea. You have beauty and glory. Glory is what the 8th Sephirah on the tree, right? Had. in glory of the, you have hey, right? So you have the second and fourth letters of the tetragrammaton, and also associated with a window, which comes from a wind door. So, and what was the last one? Viewing in glory of the day, right?
Dei.
From Deus, right? God.
Deus.
Yeah, the Latin version of the Yudevave. So, I mean, and so people are like, why are we saying this thing about the sun?
This is good.
Yeah,
this is good. I mean, I think that's what I really like about you. One of the things I like about you is how well you're able to put all this symbolism together and see all the connections. I like to do the same thing, and it's fun. You know, and I've taken walks in, you know, different European cities. You know, whenever I travel, that's all I do. I just go around, look at the buildings, and try to look at the symbolism and the Masonic stuff, because it's everywhere, and people aren't seeing it.
In plain sight.
It's in plain sight. It's just everywhere, and I just love it. You know,
I do some secret walking tours around DC. My cousin was in town the other day. I did a quick one of the National Mall just to, you know, you look at the archives building, or you look at FDA, and it's just like, if you don't know astrology, if you don't know Qabbalah, if you don't know, you're just missing it. I mean, why? I mean, going for, you know, on some of these buildings, and it's very clear, like a fresco describing like astrological goings on, and I did one in Jerusalem this year. I did one in. I mean, I was in France, did a secret walking tour of the Champs-Élysées. Man, if you know the mythology of Osiris, I mean, just to like walk down the Champs-Élysées and get why Napoleon put the national legislature on one side, and the Place de Concorde, you got our Washington Monument, this big phallic obelisk, right? Obelisk from Bale's
Couldn't be more
shaft.
obvious than that. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, we're all these great men throughout history, all nuts that influenced, you know, our society and the construction of the world we live in. Were they all crazy? Probably not.
Well, people don't recognize that the history of the world is the history of secret societies, you know, and war on one level, and then working hand in glove at another level. So that, you know, that's why, you know, L'Enfant has no problem coming from France to you know, help us set up the nation's capital, which is you know, dedicated to the moon goddess Columbia.
That's right,
Columbia.
You know, and there was a quote I was trying to, let me see if I can find it on my Facebook, or I shared it on the Esoteric Sundays page.
Yeah.
It was from Albert Pike. You know, and I know he just recently had a statue torn down. And I'm not going to get into that because that just gets political. But one thing I would say about that is I've never seen any really credible evidence that Pike was a racist or he was involved in the KKK. I mean, these are rumors, but I've never seen any credible evidence. But still, people think those things.
I'm going to stay away from this one.
Oh, okay, because you got credible evidence. All right. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, everything I've read by him, he seems like a great guy.
But you got to decouple that stuff. It's like, you know, it's you know, this is some of the you know, false narratives of the left. You know, trying to, you know, paint Jefferson with a particular brush. You know, you can't judge men, you know, ethnocentrically. You can't judge somebody in the 1700s based on the norms.
I know that's ridiculous. Yeah. Because nobody was thinking those thoughts back then, or like today with our political
correctness. It's a fool's errand. You're going to go nowhere with it.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
Yeah.
And nobody's perfect, and especially not perfect when you're judging them by a standard 300 years later or whatever it is, you know.
But should we not listen to Mozart because he was a womanizer? Like, should we not follow the teachings of Gandhi for what he may have done, right?
And Adam, I've heard you're not perfect. I might hang up the call now. You know, I mean, how can you move on in life if that's the way you're going to treat everything? You demand perfection continuously. Everything must be perfect. Well, welcome to the reality here.
Yeah, life is messy.
It's nuanced. It is messy. So I saw this quote from Pike. It was actually in a presentation I recently watched. That really struck me because, like a lot of quotes from Pike, it's something I've thought about and felt and didn't know how to put it into words sometimes. But it's this idea, like some people say, oh, well, there's this synchronicity. Sometimes there's these, coincidences that occur. But in fact, as I grow spiritually, I'm starting to feel like everything is a synchronicity all the time, even from the smallest things that happen to you every single day and every single moment, has all been crafted by the divine architect to promote your growth and evolution spiritually. Whether or not you recognize that, that's your issue. Now, there are moments that are more dramatic where we say, this is a divine moment, or this is a destiny moment, where it's like coincidence, ooh, and that's just because we've realized something about that moment that makes us think that. But not to say every single moment isn't part of a plan in a way. And Pike has this great quote. He said, this Masonry teaches as a great truth, a great moral landmark that ought to guide the course of all mankind. It teaches its toiling children that the scene of their daily life is all spiritual, that the very implements of their toil, the fabrics they weave, the merchandise they barter, are designed for spiritual ends. That so believing, their daily lot may be to them a sphere for the noblest improvement. So in other words, every moment, everything we do, every little interaction in the coffee shop, every, moment we have with our kid when we wake up in the morning is an opportunity for our spiritual unfoldment if we embrace it as such. Beautiful. Beautiful. That's the great work. That's the craft. It never stops.
But there's been, I don't know if I wanted to use this one, but I'll just say behind the scenes, there are groups that have tried very hard with all of their might to obscure our connection to one another, because it's very hard to make nations go to war with one another if everyone realized the connectedness of everyone.
Oh God, yes.
So
you're right. That's so sad, man.
Yeah. So, but there's, I mean, read some of the stuff from Samael and Veor, some of that Gnostic stuff. But
maybe send me that link.
Yeah. But but I think Blavatsky and others, touched upon this stuff. You started, when you see, beyond the veil, you realize that there are groups of men with nefarious men and women.
Dark forces.
Yeah, dark forces. And if
I've come up against it in my life.
Well, even when I was if you look at some of the Nag Hammadi stuff, right? Even back then, the Essenes, which I'm a firm believer that Jesus and James were members of that secret society.
That's right.
And so the stuff out of Qumran and Nag Hammadi would tell you that one of the scrolls was called the War Scroll, and they're talking about this fight of between the light and dark, way back in those days, and these were old scrolls back then, right? That's right. And so and others believe that the ancient teachings of what was really going on were all destroyed or stolen at the destruction of the library at Alexandria, and where they might have gone, or if they really were destroyed. But yeah, I think it's difficult, but I agree with you. The great work, the great work is for us all to when we study these things, especially I should say I'm a Kabbalist with a Q, not a K. I know you're a K guy, and
I'm open. K, Q, anywhere where I can get some insights. Please help me.
Yeah, but the Kabbalist looks at it's hard to keep Kabbalists divided, right? Because when you follow that tradition, you see the interconnectedness of everything, and so it's very hard to tell. I can't remember which philosopher said it, but he says there's many things worth dying for, but none worth killing for. Right, because it's when you recognize that we are all just droplets of water in this age of cancer of the great ocean that is deity, then it's pretty hard to tell somebody that it's like cut off your own finger, shoot yourself in the foot. It's literally that's what you're doing.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, but so I mean, to me, I agree. The great work is And going back to your earlier question, that's what Qabbalah, or that's what Masonry is to me. It is a repository that reminds us, and because the teachings of Qabbalah in this world where we are, right? Malkuth is called the kingdom because of the four kingdoms that tempt us, right? You know, the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom. And so booze and music and all these things that are, you know, they're so tempting
interesting
and distracting, right? It's hard to remember from whence we came.
Right. And it's kind of like the tale of emanation, you know, it's the final crystallization, this Malkuth, this kingdom. And that gets into another interesting thing. I was actually thinking about putting together a presentation on emanationism.
Yeah.
Because I think just thinking like an emanationist is something that we can all use if we're going to get interested in esoterica or deeper, you know, the deeper mysteries of Masonry. You have to start to be able to fathom what this idea of emanation is.
Yeah.
One other thing, you know, I want to talk about bordering on sort of ritual and magic, but not going too far down that rabbit hole. This is something I recently heard about. Have you heard of the podcast Glitch Bottle?
No.
Interesting podcast. I got turned on by a friend who's deeply into ceremonial magic. Very, very wise brother. And he said, like, if anybody, you know, if you're into ceremonial magic and any of this stuff, or you want to learn about it, Glitch Bottle is the podcast. So I started listening to Glitch Bottle, and I was like, wow, this is some serious shit. You know, these are people on here that have been working with angels for like 30 years and telling details of how to do it. And I'm like, wow, this is a whole nother world I haven't gotten involved in yet. And really fascinating stuff. And one of the things they were saying on one of those podcasts was that one of the reasons why the Catholic Church has been against Masonry and other sort of secret societies that do ritual is they wanted to have
monopoly
on ritual magic. And because if you look at a lot of what the Catholic Church is doing under the auspices of prayer, it's ritual. They're doing ceremony and ritual, and that they don't want people going off on their own.
Well, just look at the Vatican itself.
You have to go through their system to do the ritual. They're the only ones that are allowed to do exorcisms or communicate with angels or whatever it is. That you can't have everyone willy-nilly going off forming their groups doing rituals too, because then we've got a competition for power.
And it's not confined, it's not confined to the Roman Catholic Church, right? This is the I mean, see also the Imam interpretation, see also the Hadadim in Israel and what they do. They have a stranglehold on what's kosher and who's Jewish and
There you go.
You don't get bar mitzvahs or anything without the Hadadim. You know, they're the kingmakers in the Knesset, right?
That's right. So. That's right. Let's see. Okay, so let's go to an easy question: the problem of evil in the world.
Sure, that I was hoping this one would come up.
This is one I've struggled with, and I know about the high priest walking across the checkerboard floor and such, and that there's a purpose to everything, and we have to see, and that even this was discussed in that recent Johnny Royal documentary on the Illuminati, which was awesome, where he talks about one of the rituals in the Illuminati, or one of the degrees, they talk about having that far off perspective of deity, whereas it all makes sense, even the bad. There's a higher purpose for it all, and that sort of explains the problem of evil. But yet, if you get down to a detail, like I say, well, what about that little kid that was put in a cage and sexually abused by this molester? I mean, how is that right? How does that make sense in this world? That's the real hard one. That's the one I want to try to talk about. What do you mean? Well, how do we make sense of these things?
Tough question. So, I don't know about Johnny's, a well done documentary. When it's a documentary about the Illuminati and then it winds up with there's no conspiracy, I don't know. That I'm not buying it. I mean, it's well done, and I know
there were a variety of opinions.
And I know Joe Wages, is a great researcher, but I don't know. I'm not buying that just between you and me and everyone that's listening. So and Washington wasn't either, right? He was famous for saying, when they were saying, the Bavarian Illuminati is in your army, he's like, yeah, none are so satisfied of that fact than I, right? So
I didn't know that. Wow.
Oh, sure, they were infiltrated. We'll also look at when who was Weishaupt what was his teachings at the University of Ingolstadt? Why did they pop up in 1776? What else happened around that time?
And the whole Willermo's connection.
So, but anyway, your question about the easy one about evil in the world.
Yes.
And particularly,
I was joking when I said easy. I'm sorry.
No, I'm with, but I'm
Yeah.
glad. I mean, that's good. You're keeping it real, because that is a real question, and that that I'm not gonna, I wouldn't shy away from. But I'll say that going back to the evil men and women behind the curtain. These are very subtle energies, the astrology and the energies that children put off. And there are very bad people that know exactly how to manipulate those things. And you see it, it's hidden in it's hidden in plain sight in the Bible, right? You see the sacrifices to Baal or Baal, and you see Moloch, and there's a reason why they were sacrificing innocent children.
Right.
And so
some would say they were trying to feed some other beings to work for them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, but these are, that's next level stuff. But but just, long story short, but it also feeds into why are these, great cities designed the way they are in order to harness energies, right? So there's a reason why DC is laid out the way it is, and the wheel and spoke pattern, and why there's a giant, phallus in the middle of it, which is, the Washington Monument, that draws in the energy, all around. Read Oveson's The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, or others. There's impressive books that show you the geometry of this area. And I like personally to do, like I said in the beginning, runs on the National Mall and feel the energy of the ley lines coming down 16th Street, of the, I like to go around the Capitol, right? The womb of the goddess, and then over to the phallus of Osiris, which is the Washington Monument, and feel the energies along the National Mall, because it was all designed to harness these very subtle energies, which the Chinese call the dragon lines, or we may call the ley line. And so these subtle Mother Earth energies of Malkuth, when you, anyway,
I think you raise a really important point, that there are, there's a real possibility that we need to consider, that there are some people in positions of power that have evil motives. And I guess we as Masons should be fighting against that somehow, and creating peace and harmony in society and goodness. And they don't like us for that reason. That's one of the reasons that they don't like us, because people doing evil don't like somebody trying to bring good into the world. As sad as that is. That's why we have to lift the veil. We have to face the reality of what's on the other side.
Which is the end of the world.
Which is the end of the world, which hopefully will happen right as we end the show. Perfect timing. And I don't have to do any editing.
Remember the death card. The death card in tarot, right? He's carrying the scythe, but it's from mowing down that field of wheat and setting it on fire and destroying it. From there, that's what creates the nitrogen-rich soil that the new seeds grow from. So
that's right.
So there's nothing in the 10th card of the Major Arcana. Also, the Wheel of Fortune, or the Wheel of Samsara, is right. It's got a serpent going up one side, and it's got the other guy going down the other side. And so it's
that's a great image.
It's cyclical, right? It's not like, it's not a negative, right? It's and it's like the whatever the Churchillian quote, that the pessimist sees the negative in every opportunity, and the optimist sees the opportunity in every negative, or whatever.
Oh wow! Okay,
so
that's right.
So the Wheel of Samsara, the Wheel of Fortune, reminds us that there is that we will rise from these ashes.
Right, and that's a good point. It also reminds me of another possible explanation for the problem of evil, that people, if they bring in reincarnation, that is another avenue that could help to explain, if you believe in that thing, that, perhaps some people did something really evil in a past life and now they're paying for it. And That's the sort of one way people explain why do bad things happen to good people, for example. Where it seems like in this life, this person has been nothing but good. Now, why did they have to go through that? Why do they have to experience that? Some who believe in reincarnation say, well, there's a longer history to this soul. And we don't understand all these things. And then another explanation for the problem of evil is that, God's a mystery. He works in mysterious ways, and we can't fathom some things, and we just have to let it go. We're not going to be able to understand. It's beyond our human comprehension. There are certain things that we may never breach in terms of fully grasping and, feeling like we have a sense of why.
Well, we're finishing the great cycle, right? So this great processional cycle of over 25,000 years is coming to a close. And so some believe, Armageddon, the revelation and the end times prophecy, it is the end. It is the end of the Piscean age.
Certainly feels like the end of something.
And we'll move into, and
all the monuments are falling. So, something's
right.
going on, man. It's the end.
But the Old Testament or the New Testament, I think Jesus says, go look for the dude carrying the water pitcher, which dudes didn't carry water pitchers in biblical times. And so that was an obvious reference to Aquarius. So, so as we enter the dawning of the age of Aquarius, things will change, and these guys will reap what they sow. But I think Masons, I like to see, the great thing about 2020 is some of these negative designs on the trestle board for the other team. We're all people with eyes to see and ears to hear. I mean, it's never been more obvious. So
that's right.
So that's, awesome. And we just need to keep plugging away and, loving our neighbors as ourselves and shepherding the weak through the valley of darkness.
Right. And stimulating, higher thoughts and positive values and such. So let's see, maybe we've got a couple other questions I was thinking about asking. Which one do you want to talk about? We could talk about Masons online and what we can do as Masons to reduce the divisiveness that we're seeing in the world today. Or we could talk about the symbol of the Rose Cross.
Well, I think we use, as much as I would feel comfortable talking about with the Rose Cross right now, I think I would stick with more of the Kabbalistic interpretations, which I think we touched on with Tiferet and also the cross. People could see some of the other stuff I've done on, but I mean that's all about sexual union and the Kabbalistic tree as well. About I'm also the Grand Order of DC. And I just did a thing for the Grand Masters blog that went out to everyone. Said, everything, all the bad things going on right now with the pandemic and house arrest and whatever else we're dealing with now. The good thing is we've never seen Masonic education like this. Like, you and I have been in some of these meetings where, there's, just south of 200 people. Like I'm, used to going to present at lodges. I'm lucky if there's 20, like 30, that was like an amazing presentation. But to have I think my last one, Occult Symbols of Freemasonry, Secret Sixes, that was, I think 150 something people. Like when do, and they're from everywhere. Like I got a buddy from Israel that's calling in. I got guys from the West Coast.
So awesome.
We're going to be doing, you mentioned Jamie Lamb earlier, at the end of this month for his new book, Approaching the Middle Chamber. We are, Joe Martinez and I are on behalf of BBF are going to put a platform. I want to say it's Sunday the 28th. And
when are you guys going to let me in BBF, man?
You think I have some sort of power?
No, I got to do a petition, obviously. But I want to join.
Oh yeah, I mean it's I love my lodge. Whatever Mishigas is happening in other lodges or Grand Lodge level or anything like that. When you have a very strong Blue Lodge, it's fine. My mother lodge in California is that strong. my lodge here, BBF, is great like that. My family lodge in London is very strong like that. So so it's awesome. So but the you know, for guys like us, which at one time were the lunatic fringe of Freemasonry, right? When I came in through the Grand Lodge of California, the you know, to be an esoteric Mason, like we literally would go meet, and if any of my brothers that from back in those days are listening to or will be listening to this, you know, they'll smile because it was like a very big deal to like be talking about these things. Like you felt like you were doing something wrong. We literally had like special meetups, and we had a buddy that was, you know, he was going to be something special. He was the master of a lodge, San Diego number 35. He ended up becoming our 2017 Grand Master there, and he was like one of the guys that we could talk about with these things. Like, and most worshipful John Eisner, but yeah, I'm telling you, like, to talk about, you know, the deeper meanings that, you know, that were, you know, worshipful masters don't, you know, whatever, they have a top hat, you know, for the same reason as Jews have yarmulkes, and Sikhs have turbans, and it's all Kabbalistic, right? It's all associated with the crown, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah. Or in Latin, corona. Right.
And it's symbolic of that connection to the divine in theory anyway. Like the divine king, you know, the philosopher king of Plato.
And so, yeah, but so I mean, you know, the silver lining of this whole thing, you know, has been, you know, education. I mean, I think I saw that Refracted Light now has like what, over 3,500 guys in it.
And gals, mind you,
and gals, right?
Yeah. Because it's not a tiled lodge or anything.
That's right, and I'm a big
secrets
fan
conveyed.
Of that. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I'm you know, I'm a fan of what, you know. Yeah, I mean, if it's up to me, I always do presentations open. I like both energies to be there. You know, I took my obligations to, you know, not, you know, be it, you know, in lodges with, you know, Masonic lodge with women, so fine. But besides that, those are like political distinctions. Like that you know, when I'm taking obligation, I hold fast. But beyond that, like, I see the value of, you know, them being engaged.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the fact is, you know, people are interested to learn more about Masonry, and I think Refracted Light has given people an opportunity to ask questions of actual Masons, to hear what Masons have to say, you know, what kind of wisdom they have to offer the world. And I think it's going to cause, and I think some other brothers have mentioned this too, it might cause an uptick in, you know, membership once we get through this COVID thing and lodges start opening back up. I think you're going to get a lot more brethren trying to join lodges with an interest in education.
Yeah.
You know,
well, the same way that we had an uptick after the Da Vinci Code came out, right?
Exactly.
So and we picked up, you know, by training, I'm a demographer among others, but the you know, I like to do these demographic analyses, and if you looked at like at the post Da Vinci Code era, we took up a lot of like younger and esoterically minded Masons in a lot of different jurisdictions. So that's good, because, you know, the you know, that old definition of insanity again. Like, you know, if we think that Freemasonry is going to change by having the same group of guys, if we're just bringing in more guys between the ages of 50 and 80, which we've had, then we're not going to have a change of mindset. And so,
we need that. We need that. I mean, it's just, it's ironic to think that you felt like an outcast talking about anything deeper with symbolism in the past in Masonry. I mean, because you're basically talking about what the, you know, intellectual leaders of Masonry have been talking about, like Pike, Mackey. You're talking about what they're talking about, and somehow that's bad or weird.
Well, you think about like
thought leaders of the craft.
Well, you think about even the early days of the formation of the UGLE, right? The Desagoulier and these guys were members of the Qabbalah Club. I mean, that's what these guys are all Kabbalists. If you read, you know, Morals and Dogma, it's all about Qabbalah. It's all about astrology. It's all about alchemy.
Yeah, I mean, Masonry is like a gateway drug to all kinds of profundity.
Yeah.
and depth and deep things and mysteries. And if you're into that, you know, I think it's a great doorway that invites you in. And there's a lot to explore, and it never ends.
Yeah, and you can get in where you fit in. You know, you
That's
go
right.
through your first 3 degrees, and some guys are, you know, contented by the lessons of you know, the York Rite, and they're happy as can
Sure.
be by, you know, putting on chapeaus and, you know,
Yeah.
holding swords and
Teach their
whatever.
own, right? You know, whatever floats your boat.
But some of us, you know, find our way to the Societas Rosicruciana and
Right. That's
others,
right.
and it's like, and you get to study these things,
Yeah. For
and
those
then
that want that.
those that want that, but luckily,
Yeah.
thought leaders, you know, that you know, were members of the SRIA, and they went off to form, obviously, the Order of the Golden Dawn, and others. So there are you know avenues for people, you know, of each, you know, if you're more of an exoteric guy and there's great things and you want to do philanthropy, we got a place for
We
that.
got it. Oh yeah.
But if you're if you're an esoteric you know, minded person, then there's a series of you know, avenues for you. And right now is you know, some of these presentations online, getting back to your question, what, you know, there's a lot of good stuff, and I know that some of your you know, Sunday watch parties have been awesome, right? And so had some really great stuff on astrology and
Thanks,
whatnot
man.
recently. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying, you know, it's so usually if I cancel a Sunday watch party is because I haven't had time to watch enough videos online
Yeah.
to find something good enough.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put out something that I'm not super excited about, because, you know, it's my reputation, man.
Yeah.
So, but I enjoy it a lot. I mean, I've always been the type since childhood. I like to share, and I like to invite my friends over. When I was a kid, I would invite my friends over and like take out all my toys and show them all my toys.
Yeah.
Now my toys are esoteric documentaries, you
That's
know.
right.
And so I like to invite my friends over, have a beer, have some nice food, and watch some esoteric documentaries together. That's fun as hell to me, you know, and then discuss them. And so I was starting to do that before COVID, but now that COVID's here, I've been doing that all online, like you said, through Esoteric Sundays watch parties.
I'm the same way,
But
by the
fun.
way. I had a brother that came over yesterday, and I was just getting out of the shower, so I went and opened the door for him while I was finishing up, because we were having a barbecue here, and of course, like, the one book I had just bought, and it's like this really rare one out of East Europe, and I didn't want, like, you know, like, I hid it like between like two books that I thought nobody would ever care about, you know, and just like hid it in there. And of course, you know, he goes right to that book, and like, and so when I'm getting ready, he's like, you mind if I look in this book? I'm like, well, actually, I haven't even opened it yet. Like, give me a minute. I want to be the first one to open it. He's like, oh, too late. I've already looked at it. But I'm with you. Like, those are my toys now. Like, those are like
Yes.
my like, I want to be the first one to play with that toy.
Yes.
Right? That's
Yeah,
my
exactly. And sometimes my family or my mom doesn't understand, you know, like, you know, I don't have a lot of time, and then I'm like reading a book on esoteric or working on some
yeah,
presentation or something, like, well, why are you busying yourself? I'm like, but this is my fun. This is
yeah.
my free time. This is what I like to do on my free time. I like to study, you know,
Well, and like
I
you said,
enjoy it.
your karma. I mean, it's, you know, what you were put here to do. Your karma, your dharma.
Yeah,
It's like, I don't know.
that's
Like,
right.
it. I can't sleep if I don't do this, because if you believe that, you know, we are in this, you know, interesting astrological moment in our history, then yeah, I mean, there's no time to waste. Like, you need to know these things. There's and that means either reading new books, or you know, I just gave a talk on the hermetic teachings of the Council of Kadosh degrees at our Scottish Rite Valley, and for it, I, you know, reread the Qabbalah, among other Corpus Hermeticum books, and I read it years ago,
Yeah.
but you'd never know it because I've grown. So the
Yeah.
teachings haven't changed. It's been the same letters on paper the
Right.
whole time. But as I've grown, as I read it now, it's all Kabbalistic, right? And so,
Right.
and it's yeah, and but yeah, no time to waste, you know.
No, there's no time to waste, man. That's why we need that 24-inch gauge, you know,
That's
time
right.
management more and more these days. I mean, there's so much I want to learn. I've got, you know, like us all, I think, a stack of books now, and I keep ordering them and I can't read them. But I know they're there and they're ready for me, and I want to dig into them. My dream
They
is
had
to,
it. They had it wrong on that 24-inch gauge. They said to break it into 3 segments of 8. Man, I found if you break it into 6 segments of 4, you can do more things.
oh, interesting. Well, it's good to get creative. Yeah, I like that. Nice, man. All right, brother. Well, brother Adam Goldman, thank you so much, bro. This has
Yeah,
been
thank you.
fantastic. I really enjoyed this
You
talk,
too.
and a wonderful way to start Father's Day. So happy Father's Day. I don't know if you have any
And to
kids.
you. And to you.
Do you have kids?
I don't.
But happy Father's Day anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
My brethren are my kids, so I find that,
that's right.
you know, I mentor a lot of guys, and I think it has a lot to do with that. The you know, in the army shrinks would say that I had a male mother personality type. So
Oh,
I
sweet.
yeah, so
Army shrinks.
yeah. You know how they are. So
Oh
they
my
gotta
God.
give you a seal of approval before they let you go. So
Yeah, I know. I know. All right, brother. Well, thanks so much. Let's do it again, and let's keep this dialogue going. And I can't wait to have a beer or whatever you want to drink. Let's do it, man.
yeah, well, you're welcome. You're welcome over whenever you want. So you know where I am. I'm in Logan
Cool.
Circle, and anyway, thank you
Yeah.
for having me, and thank you for all you're doing for the crowd.
Thanks, brother. Same to you.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Cheers.
All right.
Peace.
Take care.
Bye bye.